Hi, today I'm going to do a number of different versions of off-center, eccentric, multi-axis turning with a bit of luck. Depends on how they go. The first piece of wood I've got is a little piece of probably sycamore from the garden that's just been found in the back of the cupboard. It's already got a tenant on it. And so first off is to get it into the jaws. I've put some quite deep gripper jaws on because part of the process of doing the off-centre turning, the first version, is that the wood is adjusted in the lathe in to an offset position. So I need it to have deep enough and grippy enough jaws to allow me to do that. Before I start though, I'm just going to mark this up so that I know where all the angles and right angles are, so that when I do the offsets I can have a decent reference point. So I've just marked it up at right angles across the centre approximately, just so I know roughly where things are. It's got a centre mark in this end and a centre mark in this end. So first thing to do, I'll make this into a little goblet, I think, is to turn a cup on this end. Then just use a couple of Forstner bits to take out the bulk of the inside of the bowl. And then I just profiled and smoothed the inside with the negative rate cut-pied cutter, and then a high-speed steel negative rate scraper. So I've got the wall thickness down to a couple of mil or so a bit of sanding, and then followed by a bit of chestnut sanding sealer in the inside of the bowl. So I'm just doing some more shaping at the either end, the goblet end and the base end, just in preparation for the next stage. Oh, I decided I need to do some different shaping down here. I haven't really thought this through, so I'm just going to put my tennis ball in to give it a bit of support, and then just reshape the bottom down here, just so I've got the start of a stem before I do the first offset. Right, the next stage is to adjust the workpiece in the chuck jaws at a slight angle. Each adjustment is at 90 degrees to the previous one. So I've just marked up where the chuck jaws are, and I've pulled the workpiece out by a couple of millimeters, centered on the first chucking point, number 1, so that when it actually is now fired up, it's going to be wobbling around that eccentric axis. Make sure the chuck's done up nice and tightly because the out of balance force could of course rip the workpiece out of the chuck. That's one of the reasons why I've used the deep gripper jaws here. So I'm now creating a bead. Of course it's off centre, so there's some wobbly bits to turn off to start with. So just creating a bead on this axis, and then it'll be turned 90 degrees, and then another bead created on the next axis, and so on. I've swapped from the 3/8 spindle gouge to the 1/4 inch spindle gouge with quite a reasonably sharp profile at the end, because you need to get in either side of the bead to create the coves, and it's quite easy to get a catch if you're not careful. So it's good practice in tool control. Turn on this axis, you will abut the previous piece of turning. In this case it's the stem under the goblet, and it's quite easy to go too far if you're not careful and cut into that previously turned piece. So you have to keep stopping and checking to make sure that you're okay. You need to go through the grits with the sandpaper at each stage because you don't really want to have to go back and do it again. So each time you turn the bead and the coves, sand them to completely finished before you then rotate the piece into the next off centre. So that's fully sanded. Time now to move the workpiece back to the neutral position to start with, so that you know where you are, and then I'm just remarking everything so I don't get lost, and then pull it out another 2 or 3 mil at the next 90 degree point. Give everything a good tighten down and then off again, repeating the same process. As you turn on each fresh axis, you need to obviously turn the cove and shape the bead, and then you need to blend it in. You can see the ghost on that image. You need to blend it in to the previous turned area. Just watch the wings on the spindle gouge on the off-centre bead from the previous turning. Quite easy to find that you get a knock if you're not careful. And then fully sand through the grits that area, so you don't have to come back to it again, just as before. Right, now it's sanded, go back to the chuck, move it around 90 degrees, and slacken it off, and move it 2 or 3 millimeters again off centre in that direction. I've only done the off centre stagger by a couple of millimeters, and even with that amount you get quite a nice effect developing. Of course, the more that you do it, the more extreme the effect gets.
Off we go again. That was number 3 there. Push that in, rotate, move it out, and reset. Right, that's the last rotation, so I'm just going to put it back now to square, and then dress the bottom off.
Right, there's a little detail here that I just want to trim up, so I've popped it back in the lathe, put the ball on. I've decided to put a little band of detail on with some texturing using the crown texturing tool, but I'd not quite realised when I was doing this that the goblet has moved during the turning, and it's not quite true. So I had to have a couple of attempts at actually getting the texturing to take properly all around the actual piece. So it ended up being sort of a crisscrossy effect because I had to push in on a couple of occasions to actually get some effect, and I then trimmed it up with a point tool afterwards, a couple of lines either side just to sharpen it up. Then a final sand up and a bit of sanding sealer. I haven't finished this piece yet because I wasn't sure whether I should paint it, but it's just a test piece, so I'll probably leave it as it is. So there we have it, a little sycamore off-centre goblet stroke egg cup. Bit of fun.